around 250 odd students. Right. Okay, my name is Professor Amrit Sen, and I am coordinating this AECC course, primarily a language course in modern Indian languages, of which English is the option that you have taken. Please remember that you could have taken Bangla, Hindi, any other language. In case you have taken that, please depart from this class because this is not meant for you. Meant only for people who have taken AECC in English, right? So on behalf of the Department of English, I welcome you first to Visva-Bharati, right? It's a university which is an institute of national importance, and you have been fortunate that you are admitted into this institution, right? Now, as regards the conducting of the course, there are 250 and more students who have enrolled, and therefore we are unable to accommodate more than 100 people in a meet. So what I'm going to do is I put out the YouTube channel details in the chat box, in the website notice as well. Please do subscribe. All lectures immediately after they are held will be uploaded. So if in the next class you can't join, somebody else has joined, then just go to the YouTube link and listen to the lecture, right? And you will be ready. Topuda has already told you that there is no internal for this course. So you don't have to appear for an internal examination, but you have to fill up your forms for the final examination. That is your responsibility and not of the Department of English. If you forget that, you will not be able to appear for the test, right? So keep that at the back of your mind. Tell your friends. I have heard that you have formed a group. Good for you. But please do not call me. You know, many students have been calling me. It is very, very disconcerting for us, right? So all classes will be recorded and immediately uploaded, right? I will have a special class where if there are any questions that you have, then I will answer those questions during that class. Also at the end of this class, if you have any questions, I will answer your queries, right? So I put up on the website a schedule, given you all the links. Those links are to be followed. If you cannot join them, just wait for a few hours and the lecture will be uploaded on YouTube, right? Okay, a few do's and don'ts. First and foremost, please do not speak while I am speaking until I am asking you to do so, right? Do not switch on your microphones. I don't want you to switch on your video also because that will consume your data. I'll be taking a dense class. You see, it does not mean that, you know, you are attending an AECC class. So this is a kind of a joke, or it's a past class. So it's not going to be of quality. It's going to be of top quality. So listen to me carefully. And I hope you will carry these skills into your practice of writing and communicating later on, right? I hope that is clear to you now, right? It is with that, therefore, that I would like to go to my PowerPoint presentation. I have sort of worked hard and made a PowerPoint presentation for you, right? Which I want you to carefully see. Now, can you see this on the screen? Topu, is it visible?
Yes, it is okay.
Right. So I'm going to put it on slideshow mode, right? This is just a reminder that this will not, you know, be sent to students. If you have to revisit it, you will have to go to the YouTube link and revisit. Please don't ask me to send this to you, right? Okay, so I've titled this course, Elements of Communication. And it's a short course, as you can see, communication is a huge topic. Now, this is the first question that I'm going to ask you. What is communication? Communication is defined as the process of sending and receiving information. So right now, I am sending you information, you are receiving it. We are communicating. Right. Supposing two of you are sitting side by side, and you are you feel that he's not taking a good class, So you make a facial gesture to another person. That too is communication. So what are the elements of communication? That's very important to understand. So first and foremost, there's a sender. So I am the sender in this case. I am sending you a message, right? So the communication is, the message is part of the communication. That's what I want to send, right? Now, how will I send this? I will send it through a channel. So in this case, it's the spoken word. It can be the written word. I can write to you. It can also be a picture. You send emojis, don't you? Right. That's a picture. So that is another channel. You can send a painting to somebody. You can send his cartoon. That is a communication, right? So there are various forms and channels of communication, but all of them involve a sender, message, and of course, I can't talk to myself. That communication does not happen. That is a very communication of a spiritual order. You are communicating with yourself, or you are communicating with God. Even when you communicate with God, you send up a prayer. That's also a form of communication, right? And there has to be a receiver, right? So you have sender, message, channel, and a receiver. These are the elements of communication. And what is communication? Once again, it's a process of sending and receiving information. A process of sending and receiving information. That is what communication is. So every single moment that we live, we are sending and receiving information. We are relentlessly communicating with each other, right? That's what the definition of communication is. So if you are asked in a university question, what is communication? You'll write, communication is the process of sending and receiving information. It involves several elements, including sender, message, channel, and receiver. It can be of various types, including verbal and non-verbal communication. Right. So what are the 4 types of communication? Now that we have established what communication is, what are the 4 types of communication? The first type is, of course, the one that I'm doing right now. It's verbal communication. So you use words to talk, right? We use speech. Now, this is the most personal form of communication. Of course, if I whisper in your ear, or if you're talking to your girlfriend, if you're talking to your parents, you're using a very intimate mode of communication, right? And therefore, its effectiveness is crucial for developing and maintaining of all relationships. If we did not communicate, right, then our relationships would all break down. Just see about, they say that, if you have a distance, you forget people. Why? Because we do not communicate, right? Out of sight, out of mind, out of communication, relationships are destroyed. So verbal communication is the one which uses speech. Now, there can be various kinds of speech. You can say, please do this for me. You can say, you have to do this for me. You can order, do this for me. These are different forms of verbal communication. And you use different tones, right? Sometimes you plead, sometimes you order, sometimes you beg, and sometimes you are neutral, sometimes you are sarcastic. Right. Topu, is your microphone on? Could we sort of put that off, please? Then there are non-verbal, there is non-verbal communication where messages are sent without, sorry, there's somebody's microphone on. Okay, right, thank you. There's non-verbal communication where messages are sent without any speech, right? So you hug somebody, right? You meet somebody on the road, you hug somebody, right? So you're saying, I love you, right? You are my friend. You see somebody on the road who is your enemy, you show a fist to him. So you're saying, I'm angry, right? You blow a kiss at somebody, so you say you are loving him, right? Or you stare and frown at somebody, right? Very often when you were young, your mother would have, looked at you with large eyes. She was making non-verbal communication. Messages was being sent without speech. And therefore, sometimes actions speak larger than words. You were shouting, your mother came and gave you a tight little slap and told you, she didn't tell you to shut up, but you shut up immediately, right? And the implications of this non-verbal, because when you're talking, very often, it's very easy to understand what is being said. But in non-verbal communication, it's slightly more complicated. And we'll look at non-verbal communication a little later on. There's another form of communication which all of us also do. That is the written communication. You use the written word form. You're writing emails, you're writing letters, you're writing articles. So that is a written communication. Look at the newspaper. It's a written communication of news. Look at your email. It's a written communication of news, of your message that you want to send. And it's best for sending large amounts of important information. So if you take a look at the newspaper, a letter is one-to-one, but a newspaper reaches a huge number of people. So mass information you can send through the written word. Now we can say in a political rally also, political leader can talk and communicate to a lot of people, right? But in the written word, if you publish a book, write in a newspaper, it reaches a whole lot of more people. And very important is that the written communication is amenable to retrieval without distortion. So it's there. You can retake a look at it. Say, this communication, this class that I'm having, I am now recording and putting it up on YouTube. So you can retrieve it. But when you talk, you can't retrieve that conversation until and unless you record it on your mobile phones, which many of you do. But otherwise, daily oral communication or verbal communication is not retrievable. Written communication is retrievable and provable. Those of you who are from the Sanskrita department will remember, and many of you will have heard this proverb, Shatang Bada Ma Likha. Speak 1,000 words, do not write down anything. Because once you write down anything, that is there for everybody to retrieve. Right? So remember, Shatang Bada Ma Likha. Right. And then there is, of course, visual communication. For example, I heard somebody from Kala Bhavan in this. There was somebody from Kala Bhavan in this class. I don't know which department he's from. Maybe he's from painting, maybe he's from sculpture. But he's trying to tell us something through that painting. A picture also speaks 1,000 words, right? And nowadays, of course, you see, all these are coming together, the verbal and the visual in cartoons, for example, right? So that is the element of visual communication. So when, Michelangelo paints or sculpts David, he's talking about the power of man, right? Or when Leonardo paints Mona Lisa, he's talking about the grace and beauty of the woman, right? So these are graphical representations of data also. Very often, communication is not just painting. If there's somebody from the economics department, there are graphs and pie charts. Remember, in your school days, you have used graphs, charts. They are also representation of data and communication. And they create a more lasting impact than write-up. So a picture can speak 1,000 words. A photograph, for example, is important communication. Right? So we have the verbal, non-verbal, written, visual. Of course, they might intermingle. For example, as I said, on television, you have both the verbal and the visual. And also, if you noticed yesterday's news, go back and check today's news. You will find that you are being shown a picture, visual. Somebody is speaking, verbal. There's a ticker which goes on underneath telling you the main news. That's written. And of course, you understand what people are, how people are reacting to it through the non-verbal. So these modes of communication, these types of communication can overlap with each other, right? And the choice of the right channel is crucial for effective communication. So when I sort of was deciding how I could take your class, I took two channels. One is the Google Meet, the online channel, where I am verbal and visual at the same time. And I'm also showing you pictures, therefore using visual communication. And I'm also using YouTube, which is another social media channel through which information can be disseminated, right? So take a look at these forms of communication. Topu, give me a warning when I'm sort of out of time. Right. Now, we have various models of communication. This you need to understand, although these are difficult concepts, but since we're doing a course, let us take a look at it together. What are the difficult or different models of communication? This is called the Shannon-Weaver model, right? So you have a mathematician and an electronic engineer, right, talking about the mathematical theory of communication. So they talk of it in terms of an equation, as it were, right? And they talk about, and let me show you the model so that you understand. So he says that you have a sender, and the sender encodes the communication in a language. Have you ever thought this? When I say cat, you immediately think of a cat, Bidal, right? Billy. Now, does the word CAT mean anything? Nothing. It is language which makes it mean. But if I said meow, all of you would have understood. So language encodes, right? Therefore, there is a sender who encodes a message, right? When I'm saying that the cat is on the hot tin roof, I am encoding a message. That message is sent via a channel, right? So a text message, email, chat, video conference, phone call, forum posting, your Facebook message, whatever. That encoded message is then decoded by a receiver, right? It can be on your screen, it can be in a letter, it can be on the ear. So you have sender, message, receiver, and Shannon-Weaver says that there has to be also something which is called feedback. So I am talking to you, right? And then I say, okay, fine, bye. Class ended, over. You have not understood something. So that message is incomplete. There has to be some feedback. There has to be some response. And this is an equally important part of communication. Now, very often what happens is, and you have a context, you see sender's context, receiver's context, and there is noise. What is noise? Noise is where, there is communication that I want to make. So I want to tell you what today's weather is like. But if I tell you that the Shelda Ural pool is closed, that I tell you that there are 200 stars in the sky, I tell you that roads are jammed here, I tell you that my mother has cooked something like this, it is all ineffective communication. That's noise. So the message that I want to say, anything apart from that, which is extraneous to that message, is called noise. And very often, Shannon-Weaver says that the difficulty of communication is that noise is more than the actual communication. So cut out the noise and get straight to the point. Like, let me give you an example. Many of you, you've gone to you've been punished by your teachers. So in school, you went to the headmaster, and the headmaster says, why haven't you brought your homework? So you say, sir, yesterday it was very cloudy. Sir, yesterday it was raining. My father had brought me a new toy, and he says, come to the point, why haven't you done the homework? So he's telling you, cut out the noise. Don't tell me anything that is extraneous, that is extra to the information, right? Give me the precise information. When does good communication occur? Good communication occurs when the sender can send the message through the correct channel to the receiver and receive feedback without noise. That is the Shannon-Weaver model. So cut the noise and limit to the necessary, right? So once, in class you start asking a very roundabout question and the teacher says, what is your actual question? He's asking you to cut out the noise, right? Okay, so the key concepts here are sender, encoder, decoder, and receiver, and the concept of noise. But this is largely a one-way model. So Shannon-Weaver do not talk so much about the concept of feedback. This is the difficulty of this model, right? This is the simplest model of communication theory and is more effective in person-to-person communication than group or mass audience, right? So when you're talking to a group, or one group is talking to another group, then the model becomes slightly difficult, right? There are different kinds of problems with this model. Ignores feedback, and then of course there are technical problems if you cannot decode properly. So it happens that I'm speaking in Bangla to a French gentleman, so for him it doesn't make any sense. So both of us must know the language, the channel for actually decoding and encoding the message. If that fails, then spoken communication fails, right? Okay, so somebody's from a ship, he's sending you a Morse code, right? You have to know how to decode that message. Otherwise, that message is pure noise, right? Then there are semantic problems. Message is received not identical to one sent. Part of the message is lost. Very often in your phone calls, what happens? Your friend is on the verge of giving you some important information and you have some garbled noise. So that message is truncated, cut short. And effectiveness is something, I am teaching you, supposing communication. Many of you have sort of switched on your mobile phones and you are merrily texting your whoever friends on WhatsApp. I know that. My daughter does it all the time. I'm absolutely irritated when she does that, but this is what is happening. I know many of you have gone off somewhere else, switching on your phone. You have just attended the class, right? So I get no feedback. So 3 or 4 of you have responded to me. The rest have said, okay, bye-bye, thank you very much, right? Now, you will remember me only when the examinations arrive once again, right? But these are effectiveness problems. I cannot sort of see what your reaction is, whether you are understanding it, right? Remember that in class, I can take a look at your eyes and understand whether you've understood the class. Now, there are, of course, Shannon-Weaver talks about the barriers to communication, noise, that very often much that we want to say, right, is not actually said, right? Now, we go about in a roundabout way. So why do we need to learn communication? We learn to know how to say what we want to say. What is the best method? What is the direct way of telling somebody what he or she wants to know, right? Now, there are several problems here. I will come to that a little later on. The other thing is that, there are other factors involved also. For example, I can ask you to shut up. You cannot ask me to shut up, right? There are power relations here. You may say, this teacher is absolutely awful, but you have to listen to him in class, otherwise he will blast you, right? So there's another, context here of who is speaking from which position, right? So you cannot talk back to him. So power relations often affect the way in which we communicate. This you have to understand. Again, cultural implications. Let me give you an example, right? Say, for example, a cat is very precious to an Egyptian, but a gecko, tiktiki, is very, very evil to them. So there was an Egyptian girl who used to live next to our house. Me and my wife invited her for dinner, and she was, horribly horrified to see that our house had a lot of geckos. Of course, you know that Indian houses have a lot of tiktikis, so there's no issue with that. So she said, how horrible, why have you called me to a house where there are so many geckos? Right? So supposing I would have sent her a sort of fake gecko as a gift, that would have been immensely problematic for her, right? So you have to understand the cultural context in which, communication happens. You see, why did Trump come and say namaste? Because he wanted to capture the cultural context of his host country, right? Now, then comes a mass communication model, right? This is 1948, and we have the Lasswell Model. So what happens when you communicate to a large group of people? And you see, we already have cinema by this time. We have television coming in, right? So what is the effect of communication on groups of people, right? So how each part of a model can make a difference, right? So you have control analysis, analyzing the message sender, who is sending. You have a content analysis, what is being sent. You have a media analysis, which is the form of media in which I can send this. Say, for example, you send a message on Facebook, right? It can be of two kinds. You can give a one-to-one message, or you can give a public message on Facebook. Now, all of you are very, very conscious about this debate about WhatsApp that is going on. Now, what happens when a message is in social media, right? It goes and reaches a huge lot of people. Say, I am posting all these on my Facebook page. If you go to my Facebook page, you will find all my lectures are posted. I hardly post anything personal, right? Because that personal then becomes public, right? You have to understand that when I talk to you on a one-to-one basis, I am talking in private. But when I'm putting it out on a media thing, you are putting it out on a public forum which can be retrieved. There are a lot of young girl students here, right? And young boy students here also. Please remember that nowadays many private companies go back to your Facebook post for 4 or 5 years. They can analyze your data and look at what you have been doing. So please post whatever you post carefully. Secondly, there are data mining, artificial intelligence websites now, which can predict based on your messages what you will buy, what games you will play, who you will date, and so on and so forth. So that message now becomes a data breach. So your data, your personal private space now becomes public. And then also, of course, comes this notion of how and what is the effect on the people to whom the message is being sent. See, political parties nowadays all have media cells, right? They have Twitter handles, everybody has a Facebook page. So it's a concept of perception. If I send out this message, how is the receiver going to perceive me? How is the receiver going to sort of look at me? So let me give you an example. This is a vacuum cleaner salesman, right? He is communicating. He comes to your house or let us say this is a new mobile salesman. He comes in and says, buy my telephone. Mine is Samsung, buy it. Mine is the best. Don't buy a Nokia or a Chinese made phone. It is not in the best interests of India, right? Where does he say it? He says it on an ad on television. That's the channel, right? So this is the communicator. This is the message. This is the channel, right? The television is the channel. To whom is it said? Prime time viewers. Now, many of you are also, of course, taking a look at India playing Australia while I am speaking. Don't mind that. I don't. I was watching it also at the doctor's chamber, but please remember, why is it so important for advertisements during the test matches? Have you seen within every over, you have a same advertisement repeated over and over and over again, right? So it is reaching a large number of people at the same time, establishing a brand, creating and crafting the message and putting it within you. So take this kind of thing that, you have a new drink, say Pepsi. Pepsi comes in and pours millions and millions of rupees into advertising. Let me give you an example. A bottle of Pepsi, which costs, say, rupees 15, actually to manufacture costs rupees 2. Many of you are cold drink addicts. Let me tell you that cold drinks are often best used for toilet cleaning, right? I know I'm shocking you, but if you put your tooth in the cold drink for 2 days consecutively, that tooth will disintegrate. It's acidic, right? Now, remember that Pepsi comes in. I have nothing against Pepsi, of course. All of them are bad. And they create an advertisement. Till then, you were Coca-Cola. You drank Coca-Cola. Now, suddenly, Pepsi pours millions and millions of rupees. And they say, mine is the best, and you shift, right? So to whom? To the prime time viewers. And what is the effect? Brand awareness, increase in sales, and believe in the brand. So you say, okay, they're a good company. They're showing so many advertisements. Say, this very interesting thing that took place here, Saurav Ganguly having a heart attack, and he was advertising for Fortune brand oil, and immediately they pulled out the advertisement, right? So you believe, since Mr. X, who is a hero, says, I am using this cream, you think, yes, this is a good cream. Please don't go by advertisements. They fool you all the time, right? So this is the Lasswell model. Who says what, in which channel, to whom, with what effect? Mass communication model, right? So the message is designed with this end result in mind, right? So when the politician comes up on stage and says, for the next 5 years, I'm going to serve you. For the next 5 years, I'm going to do this, do that. He has the vote in mind, right? And once the vote is over, well, very often he disappears. So what is the Lasswell model's key takeaways? It's primarily a mass communication model. It suits most communication types. It ignores feedback from receiver to sender. It's a linear one-way model, and it's propaganda based. So it goes into propaganda, right? So the next model is the Berlo model. The Berlo model is unique in the sense that, I'm just skipping a few sort of slides to give you that the Berlo model acknowledges that in a particular culture, that communication is established. Say, let me give you an example. Somebody comes into, you probably saw that film PK, or what was the film called of Amir Khan, who came from outer space. And so if you go to a temple and if you suddenly enter there without taking off your shoes, then the message goes that you are irreverent. They will throw you out, right? So if you walk into, in our houses, for example, you generally put your shoes outside. That's a respect, that's a communication. You are respecting the privacy of the person concerned. But in the West, if you do that, they will consider you crazy because they wear shoes inside also. So you have social systems and cultures also affecting communication. For example, in the West, maybe you would have called me by my name. You would have called me, yes, Amrit, I'm going to go to your class. And I would have been extremely happy. I would have had nothing. Here, on the other hand, in India, you will say, sir. I'll say, okay, fine, no problem, right? I will expect. So there are cultural systems within which communication takes place. And there are proper modes of communication in specific cultural systems. Let's take this system. In the West, they will shake hands. But when you meet your elder, what will you do? You will do a pranam. What is that pranam? It is a mode, a communication telling him that you respect him or her, right? So cultural systems and codes also go into the making of communication, right? That is what the Berlo model suggests. And then, of course, there's the final model called the Barnlund model. And this uses feedback. It says that communication is possible only and only when there is a feedback possible, right? So it's a cyclical mode of communication. So I communicate to you and you communicate back to me. So at the end of the class, you write, sir, that was a decent class. You can say that was very, very poor. I did not understand any of it. Then it is only then that this communication is complete. Before that, the communication is always incomplete. So the Barnlund model uses, a very dense mathematical model. Please don't get worried. I'm not going to ask you questions on this, right? I'm just trying to give you the models, different models that you use for communication. But try and understand what Bondlund is trying to suggest. Barnlund is suggesting that there's a process of encoding and decoding, but also the message comes back to the sender and he too decodes. So when I'm sending a message, I'm encoding a message. At the same time, when the message is coming back to me, I'm decoding it. And it is in this process, it's the circular movement of the communication, that communication is properly achieved. Now, many of you, of course, you remember, do not think about feedback. All of us are very good speakers. We want to tell something. Very few of us actually listen. Please remember that good communication happens only when you listen carefully. Why? Because a person who listens carefully notices the tone of voice, notices the small details that are being said, right? So, that is when Barnlund says communication is proper when there is appropriate feedback. Say, yesterday, one of my very close friends sent an order for a mask, a set of masks, which have now become part and parcel of our routine. The mask company wrote back and said, thank you for purchasing it. Please send us feedback to let us know whether our product is of good quality. She wrote back saying, yes, it is fine. That model of communication was completed. So when many of you, almost all of you, buy on Amazon, Amazon sends you a message saying, what is the feedback? How many stars are you giving? And you click on the 5-star. So that says that communication is completed. You have given them the feedback. That is what is the Barnlund model. Therefore, it shows shared field experience of sender and receiver, simultaneous messaging, sending, noise, and feedback. It's a circular model, considered by critics as the most systematic model of communication. Please don't get worried by this kind of a diagram. It is just a circular diagram which says that the message is completed. Effective communication is where there is feedback. And it is complex in the sense that the sender and receiver must understand the code cues sent by each other. Right? Okay, so that is then what we have covered today. What is communication? What are the different kinds of communication? And what are the different components of communication? And what are the different models of communication? This is half the course on communication. In our next class, which is probably next Monday, we will take a look at the verbal and the non-verbal modes of communication, and we'll talk about how one communicates more effectively. Then we shall look at written communication in a separate class, how to write a business letter, how to write an email, which of course all of you know. I'm not going to teach you anything that you do not know. But what I'm going to do is, as an English teacher, I can tell you how to change your language a little bit so that the letter becomes more effective. The email becomes a little more effective, right? And then we are, of course, going to take a look at how to write a CV, your biodata. When you apply for a job, what is your CV going to be like? And finally, in one of our, though that does not require much teaching, that's something which we've been doing, how does one read a comprehension passage, right? So this is the course in a nutshell, right? I hope this is the first part of the communication model. I've designed this so that all of you who do not belong to my department but belong to my university use this course to take a look at how we communicate and how effectively you might communicate even more. There, of course, is, as you know, a spoken English course that is conducted by the Dean's Office at Shantiniketan. At least it was communicated before the pre-corona times. And many of you come from different backgrounds. Many of you do not use English as your first language. So many of you write well, but do not communicate verbally that well. That course will be up and running once the corona pandemic is over. So if you feel that you want to do that, it takes place after your class hours, then you are very, very welcome to join that course and improve your communication skills. With that, I will stop sharing this for the moment, and then we will, I have stopped sharing, I guess, and I will now stop the recording for the moment, and we will then take your questions. Right?
Hello, sir.
Please remember, just a moment, please remember that the question answer session is not recorded.